Welcome, everybody, to the Blackbelt Mindset Transformation Show, where each and every day we go over mindset, training, and diet nutrition strategies to help you transform your life. I'm your host, Jason Reed, and on today's show, we're going to go over a little bit of strength training, adding on what we talked about yesterday. We're over goal setting versus New Year's resolutions, and we have an interview today with fifth degree Tiger Rock World Sparring Champion and my son, Mr. Spencer Reed. But first, we're going to get into how we start each and every day is with our 3 Gs. I believe there's 3 Gs or 3 things that starts with the letter G that makes us happy and successful in life. The first one's gratitude, the second one's growing, and the third one is giving. So we're going to spend about 30 to 45 seconds, hopefully can keep track of that, on each one. So the first one is gratitude. Now, what you can do is you can first think about these, or you can write them down. You can write them down in the list below the video here, or you can write them down in your own personal journal. So first of all, what are you thankful for in your life? What relationship are you thankful for? Who are you thankful for who's helped you get to where you're at? Maybe family members, maybe not family members. What are some friendships that you've had growing up, that you have now, that you've had in the past, that made a difference in your life? Think about some of the experiences you've had, the places you've gone to. What are some of the experiences you had with that as well, too? Do you like air, water, some of the comfortable things in life that we have currently that they didn't have 200 or 300 years ago? A lot of time we get upset when people are running through us in traffic. 200 years ago, they didn't have any traffic. They had to go through and not get killed. So thinking about those things or thankful for will change your mindset. Second thing is growing. How are you growing today? What are the things that you need to improve on to get to where you need to go? A better mindset? Do you need to grow your body? Do you need to strength train, kind of like what we talked about yesterday? Or do you need to do something different? What are the things you need to do to learn, to grow, to go outside your comfort zone so you can ultimately be the best person you can? And the last one is giving. Life is nothing if we're not giving to other people. While it's great that we want to grow, we want to be happy and all those different things, it's that giving part that makes you legendary and makes you successful and really gives you the real juice of life. It's what I do. It's why this YouTube channel is up, is all about giving. So that's it. Remind ourselves how we're grateful every day. Remind us how we're going to grow each day and giving as well too. Doing these 3 things will start your day in the right aspect. The next part we're going to move on to here is to our training. Now, yesterday we talked a little bit about strength training, adding a pushing movement, a pulling movement, and a leg or a hip movement. Now, my recommendation is to pick out one of each of those and do those every single day. Now, if you're already lifting weights and you already have a strategy, then I want you to keep going with what you're doing. But the goal right now is for the first 2 to 3 weeks is just to start with volume. Take the intensity down a little bit, get used to doing it a lot of times. Once it gets to a level 6, 7, or 8 where it gets difficult, rest, relax, and do another set. Do another set, do another set. This is not the time to max out and go as hard as you can. We're gonna build up that later on. So just simply adding a little bit of volume to your training without the intensity. Take whatever you did yesterday, just do 1 or 2 more. Tomorrow, do 1 or 2 more from there. All you're looking to improve 1 step each day. That's how this thing works. It's not getting your goal in 1 second, it's a process. The last part we're gonna talk about is your New Year's resolutions versus goal setting. Most of us make these New Year's resolutions, and you probably already know where I'm going with this, and they don't work. What we found through martial arts training and through a lot of the mistakes I made, it's through making different choices and keeping consistent with those choices. You don't get to be a black belt or master or anything else if you don't show up on the days you don't feel like doing it. So what are those things that you need to be committed to? For me, I'm a little different. I'll tell you my quick story is I love lifting weights. I love training. I love teaching. It gives joy to me to do these each and every day, where many people look at me like I'm a little strange. However, posting videos like what I'm doing right now, it's not easy. To uploading videos, to make sure I'm not screwing something up, to worrying about how these are their best level. So these are challenges that I personally have. What are your challenges? What are the things that are keeping you from where you need to go? And I realize that the only thing that's going to cost me is time. But if I can make a difference in one person's life, it's all worth it. So these are the questions that I think about when getting ready to do something. Do I feel like doing it? If I don't feel like doing it, what are the consequences I'm going to have if I don't do it? Whose life could have not helped out if I didn't take that action? When you've helped out and you made a difference in people's life, it is addiction that is beyond anything else you can imagine. So anyway, that's it for today. Is what are the steps you need to be committed to? What is the action steps? So we're getting on to maybe my favorite part of it is we're doing an interview. Hopefully we'll do more of these interviews in the future, but this one is something that I'm really excited about. It's my son. He's 5th degree World Tiger Rock Sparring Champion. In fact, he won 4th degree the year before, so 2 years in a row he's won it. But what many people don't know is the stories he's had, the injuries he's had, his shoulder getting hurt. And he can probably tell you about some of those things where he's had to sit there and watch his best friends get hurt. How in Houston, he got his shoulder injured at the World Tournament. And just some of the challenges that, a lot of times we see people win these world events, but the people who've been through those painful things with you really, really matters. Now, he started at 4 years old as a Tiger Cub. So I'm going to see in my questions here, see if he remembers any of that. I taught a lot of those classes too, but now as becoming a martial arts instructor and he's full-time in our academy, he's making a difference in the lives of other people. And I could not be more excited about interviewing him. So without further ado, we have 5th degree world champion, Mr. Spencer Reed. Come on in, Spencer.
Hello. Thank you. Stop the applause.
All right. Well, first of all, as we get into this, how these are going to go is I'm going to ask a series of different questions. He's going to tell you a little bit about what he's gone through, and then I have what's called a sparring round. In our Tiger Rock system, we have 15 steps to earning a black belt. I have 15 questions for here that are hopefully quick, short, and easy, and questions that I actually don't really know the answer to. A chunk of these ones in here as well, too, that are just kind of silly. Some of them are about stuff that he likes to do in as well, too. So, but before that, let's get started. So I'm going to start. We're going to end off with the term that just happened last year because I want to lead people up to this. But, going through life, your dad is a martial arts instructor, school owner, and I became an owner when he was 2 years old. His first classes, when it was some of the first classes I started leading. So, first of all, tell me anything that you remember about starting martial arts training, your journey, or what any memories you have of that?
My earliest memories actually are before I started training. I do remember some early memories of watching you test at the academy or take classes at the academy. I remember you sparring other people. I didn't know how good you were, but I remember cheering you on and Mom was there. But besides that, earliest memories were always my first Tiger Cubs, always share times, generally speaking. I remember some bits and pieces of some of the funnier stuff that happened, but share time, I remember my first day share time for some reason, more than any other one. But I remember some of the goofier things that you would do. I remember Mr. Donnell doing the he'd put like a hamster in his jacket drill or whatever. So some goofier things. He would.
I'm going to interrupt real quick. He's talking about 7th degree black belt Shannon Donnell, who's from Sioux City, Iowa, who's now in Sioux Falls. One of my personal best friends came and taught in Lincoln, Nebraska about 2007 and 8. All right, I keep going along with the story.
Yeah, and he would teach a Tiger Cubs class about stranger awareness, and he would just stop talking halfway through his little speech and be like, "Oh no, my hamster just died," and then everyone would be all confused, and he's like, "Yeah, I get my hamster in here," and everyone would just be like, "What?" And so then all the students would stand up and start walking up to him, and then all of a sudden he'd just bear hug all of us, 7 kids in his arms, and
so he goes, and scare all of you guys.
Yeah, then everyone would run away. I remember goofy stuff like that. I remember all the goofy things you would say. So those are probably my earliest memories.
Love it. That's a long time ago, too. I have a story. I'll bring up Mr. Donnell in just a second again because some of your best friends are some of the people you trained with down the road later on. Tell me what you remember just going a little bit through their ages because Tiger Cubs, though you don't know, it's 4, 5, and 6-year-old kids. So most of us at 4, 5, and 6 don't remember a lot. And if you've ever taught those kids in class, that they have no filter and they say whatever is going on. So it's one of the funner classes we teach. So tell me a little bit about what we call our juniors, or 7 to 11 years, or I'm sorry, let's go 11 years old. That's kind of some of the formative years of your training. Tell me what you remember about either competitions, testing, anything at all.
I remember earlier years, decently. I remember always having a new form. That's something we don't do anymore, but every time I test and get a new belt color, I'd have a new form. And so I remember how chaotic classes would be with 2 or 3 instructors and then 20 different kids doing 5 or 6 different forms and having to learn my own. So I remember that. I remember learning how to spar. I remember getting my gear. I remember being a blue belt and just trying to kick and punch as fast as I could, not knowing exactly what I would do. I remember actually there's this one time, I don't remember this kid's name. He was also a blue belt, but for some reason I started the match. I was up high rank by 1 rank. I was senior blue and he was a blue belt, but I went super fast in my first combo, and I remember him being like, "Oh yeah," and then he went super fast back, and then we just the entire time. So I remember all that. I remember giving someone a black eye at testing. Not one of It was a proud moment a little bit. I wasn't as proud of it at the time as I am now, but I remember that.
Let me jump into these stories here just to kind of let some of the families kind of know what's on. When you're at blue belt level, that's about a year into the program, and he's learning to kick and punch with partners, and at this time he's probably 6 or 7 years old. They look like rock'em sock'em robots, really have no idea what's going on, but they're doing it and they're having a really good time. His testing is talking about happened at a first degree black belt level, and we'd worked really hard on keeping our hands up.
For the black eye? I thought I was a brown belt for
No, you were a black belt, and I remember the testing because I had to retest you because you hit a kid square. His hands dropped, and Spencer hit him right in the eye, and gave the kid the black eye. It was excessive contest, so sparring was a little bit different then. So we had to retest you. You didn't pass that testing, but you generally do well keeping your hands up as well too. All right, keep going.
But 10 and 11 were. I vividly remember 9, 10, 11 a lot more because that's when I met one of my all-time best friends, David Leffler. And so from the beginning of that relationship, it's easier to kind of track everything that happened. So I met him when I was 8 years old, and that's also when my training also kind of started picking up, and I started actually focusing on what I was doing and not just doing it like I knew how to do a front kick, side kick, spins, and all that kind of jazz, but there wasn't a whole lot of thought of getting better and what I needed to do, and there just wasn't a deeper thought process quite yet. But it was probably towards 9, 10, 11 when Mr. Leffler started getting really good, and he started being like kind of my main competition at the time. And then by the time we were both 12 and on the youth class, at that time, that's also when the youth class began. There was initially no youth class, but around the
I'm
time...
going to jump in real quick just for frame of reference here. In our martial arts program, we have our Tiger Cubs 4 to 6 year olds, junior class 7 to 11, and then we started about 10 years ago 12 to 15 year olds, because before it was 12 year olds and adults. And so he was on that transition. So go ahead and keep going.
Yeah, so it was around that time they started the youth class, and then I moved up, and then there's just a lot of good people that I'd never sparred before that were in the previous adult class. So it was kind of at that point everyone was working a lot harder. The youth class was quite a bit more difficult than what the juniors was at the time. So working a lot harder definitely pushed me forward. Having a lot more people that were better than me pushed me a lot more. My best friend being better than me also pushed me forward. So it was kind of during that time that I kind of went from just doing Taekwondo to starting to want to get better in everything I was doing to be the best. So that was kind of that beginning period of time then.
So a lot of those classes, because I taught a lot of those classes and watched a lot of those classes, this gentleman worked hard. His friends talking about was a hard grinder. So it was cool that somebody who's just not gifted in talent, and he was also a year older than Spencer, but he worked just as hard. And because of that work ethic, you brought up the rest of the students in class. We had a lot of really tough, great martial artists around that stage, because you have two top people going for it, but it wasn't about being better egotistically, it was in driving each other up. So it was fantastic for both of you guys as well too. So transition to a little bit of, tell everybody, I'm gonna kind of jump in here to your team sparring, some of the world tournaments, some of those things you've done as well too, and some of those experiences if you don't mind.
Team sparring is a bunch of fun. World tournaments are...
Can I jump in really quick here? We have two tournaments here locally here. We do one in Lincoln and then one in Omaha, 2 of those here. And then every July in our Tiger Rock, we have a world event. And this is where all the Tiger Rock schools get together. And then years ago, they had these thing called team sparring, where you got 3 groups of people together. So go ahead.
So that was probably one of, if not that and point sparring are my 2 favorite competition events that I've ever done. I've been going to world tournaments since I believe 2014, could be 2013, but in that kind of area of time. And for most of those years, if not every single year I went, we had a team sparring team, whether it was in the youth or in the adult program. And for many of those first years, all my youth years actually, me and Mr. Leffler and then one other person would be on a team. And we did pretty good a couple times. We got second and third a couple times. We usually did really well at national tournaments, but our world tournament, we'd usually get pretty far into it. I don't know if we actually ever ended up winning. We got second a couple times, third a couple times, but team sparring was definitely my favorite thing at that point in time. It's kind of grown towards point sparring, but towards the last couple years that they were doing it, when I turned, I had been probably 17 or 18, 19. It was 2019, so I was 18 years old, is when the Fairy Buff Dales were formed, and that was me and Mr. Colby Donnell and Mr. Peyton Donnell. Colby Donnell, another one of my all-time best friends, and then Peyton as well too. We put together a team, and it was purely for jokes because there was a ton of other good teams, and we were just kind of 3 goofballs. And we went into the Tiger Rock concession stand or store and bought all the goofiest pieces of apparel we could to look as dumb as possible in the competition. So we had these like lime green shirts with emoji faces on them that said some really cringy things underneath. We had these sweatbands on. We had our hair up in buns. We had some things on our wrists too. Like we looked goofy. And the shirts also were like super, super small. So they're all skin tight and look terrible on us. But we had like this weird headband on too. But yeah, we went through that, and then we got like 3 rounds in somehow, and then we're like, oh, wow, we're like 2 rounds away from winning this, and we ended up winning the World Championship that year, and the Fairy Buff Dales were kind of set in stone at that point in time, and that was a really fun experience there. So, but we did that, I think, for 2 or 3 years we were a team, so.
Love that story. I'm going to jump in and go here. If you want to tell about the injury that you had, maybe I think it was Houston.
Houston 2017.
Just going through this is obviously great stories going through this, but there was a couple tough years. If you want to talk about that and your shoulder injury, just to kind of tell people that this hasn't not been an easy ride, go for it.
So back in 2017, I believe, it was the Houston tournament. I was in my point sparring ring, it was just my normal ring, and I was going up against this really awesome guy named Josh. And he's a fantastic artist, and we were really close. I believe we were either tied or I was up by a point, somewhere in that range. But he was doing a lot of multiple kicks, and I ended up, what I did a couple times is I jam his foot and then come in with a punch, and that's how I got my first 2 points that round. But then the third time I tried that, he kicked out at the same time that I pushed his foot in, and I didn't let go, and it just snapped my shoulder out of place. So he kicked my shoulder out of its socket that tournament, and I got not disqualified, but I couldn't compete anymore. So he ended up winning that round, and then had to go to the ER that day. Ended up coming back. I didn't compete for the rest of that tournament, but I came back and cheered everybody on for the rest of the time. But that was a fun injury. Didn't really come up a whole lot until way later on, back in, I think it was 2020 when I toured again. I was actually training at home, training at the academy here in Lincoln, and I did a flip and swung my arm so hard, and I actually think it was probably a little bit of abuse building up from it, especially having that first dislocation and just a couple of years worth of just beating on my shoulders. It finally just gave in, and I swung my arm hard enough to where it dislocated, and I had to go to the hospital and ended up having to get surgery to repair my labrum. And that was a whole experience of its own. Was out for almost a year after that. No training for a good while. So,
come from somebody who's been trained since 4 years old to come up and miss a couple of those is a huge deal. So those are two separate, they're the same shoulder, right?
It was the same shoulder, yeah.
But two separate injuries. What was the timeline on those? Again, I forgot.
2017 is when I first did it, and then I think it was 2020, maybe 2021. I think it was 2020 when I toured again.
Gotcha. So it has not been easy as well, too. So we have classes getting ready to get started in a little bit. So we're moving on to what's called our sparring round. No, we're not going to spar together, and it's my favorite thing to do in the world is to spar, and to especially spar him. Should we have that on a future show? What do you think?
Yes.
You guys can vote. But I have 15 questions here I'm going to ask him. There will be simple, easy questions here. Let's find out a little bit more about him for you guys here, and it's kind of fun. So, all right, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, face me, Kinney. All right, first questions, if you have a choice, forms or sparring?
Sparring.
Would you regular break boards or self-defense?
Break boards.
Weights or yoga?
Weights.
What is your favorite anime?
Jujutsu Kaisen.
What's your second favorite anime?
Chainsaw Man.
Last one of these, third favorite anime.
Attack on Titan.
All right, favorite NFL team?
Right now it's the Jets.
Jets, all right. I'm not going to ask favorite college team, that should be obvious.
Huskers.
Huskers are as well, too. By the way, it used to be Packers a long time ago. Who's going to win the national championship game?
Michigan.
Michigan, I agree with that as well, too. Better cook, mom or dad?
Mom.
By far, I don't know how to do anything. SEC or Big Ten?
Big Ten.
Right on that one. There'll be a few you Alabama people won't like that one at all. College or pro?
College.
All right, a little bit of martial arts here. Favorite class to teach?
Youth class.
Youth class. Toughest competitor you've gone against? You can throw three if you want. I know two of them at least.
Three, if I'm getting three, Josh DeBro, David Leffler, Colby Donnell.
Ooh, those are good ones. Who's your best assistant instructor?
Oh, man. Avery Sabata.
Avery Sabata. This one I kind of left out earlier on. Taco and burrito.
I'm a burrito guy. I like burritos.
Okay, if you have one, this is the last question. If you have one sparring match to go against anybody in the world, who would it be against?
All time?
Yeah, it doesn't. Well, okay, let's do one. Let's go all one non-Tiger Rock. So anybody in the history of the world ever who's lived or dead, you can call anybody out.
Who's lived or dead?
This is a good question. I did better than one I had.
For the culture, I'm picking Bruce Lee of all time.
All right, favorite. Okay, then Tiger Rock. If you can spar anybody in Tiger Rock, one match where would it first of all be point? Okay, another question: point or tactical spar?
It'd be point sparring.
All right, cool.
Point sparring.
Who would it be against? You can pick anybody.
Oh man, that's such a cool question. I have so many cool answers too. Out of complete.
Don't say me because you've heard me before, so it has to be somebody different besides me.
Out of complete and utter respect for him, and just because I know he's a fantastic martial artist and undefeated also in point sparring, Mr. Grandmaster Art Monroe.
So they're hit one a little hard a little bit. If you don't know, Master Art Monroe passed away 2 years ago now. and is one of the first Grandmasters. There's 3 Grandmasters that started before. It's Grandmaster Burt Collars, Craig Collars, and Mr. Art Monroe. And he's not with us today, but he was a machine. And those who've trained with him know what I'm talking about. So anyway, we have classes starting up again. I want to first thank you guys all for making it on the show today. Tomorrow, hopefully do another venue. And if you want Spencer on the show again, put it in the links below. So look forward to seeing you guys next time on the show. See you later.